we got our first look at Karl Anthony Towns in a New York Knicks uniform. He was getting shots up at the team's practice facility. You can see him right there. The trade, which sent Cat to the Knicks, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo to the Minnesota Timberwolves, it was finalized on Wednesday afternoon. Here was Cat's reaction to this trade.
Shocked. More the word flabbergasted would be more correct, but just we got great players, and we continue to put the work in, day out. We be the best versions of ourselves. We can be every single day. We do a lot of things. We've done something special there last year, and JB's been doing something special. This is our home. I just here to, like I said, amplify them and be the best team they can be.
Two guys with great nicknames joining me now. Worldwide Windy, Bobby Money Moves here. I'm going to start with you, Brian Windhorst. How do you assess Cat's fit with the New York Knicks?
Well, when you look at the ability to add an all-star caliber player, an all-NBA type player right at the beginning of the season to a team that was a threat to win the East last year, I mean, this is the kind of move that really the Knicks have been looking for years. They turned out to develop their own superstar with Jalen Brunson, and this is sort of the complementary superstar. This is what you need in the NBA, two high-talent players who can play together. Karl Towns and Jalen Brunson can play together. They have an excellent set of complementary players. There is no reason to not have sky-high expectations for the Knicks. They paid dearly for this trade. They've spent a lot in assets over the summer. They have some depth concerns as a result of these trades, but this is the most talented Knicks roster we have seen in 2 decades, and Karl Towns is definitely injected a lot of excitement to that team.
Well, I've been on record. I've said I love this starting five. I think it's as good. It is probably the best starting five in the NBA right now before we start playing. But there's always a but to something here. I'm going to put a little bit of cold water. I'm not in favor of their depth. Certainly when you lose Dante DiVincenzo and they have their guard lineup of Cameron Payne and Tyler Kolek and Deuce McBride, that's not really my concern. The concern for me, and this is even if the trade didn't happen, was with their front court. They are awfully thin, certainly with the Mitchell Robinson injury. When you look at Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims, those are really 2 year front courts. And here's the other thing. What the trade did was it left them 2 roster spots short. They have to get to 14 with $3.6 million to be able to fill that here. So it's not like help is on the way here. So if there is an Achilles heel to this Knicks roster during the season here, it's the depth and as far as the inability to add another player.
When you say that, though, it makes me think about these Tom Thibodeau teams, Wendy, where we see Tibbs, he loves to run up the minutes of his guys. Do you think that's going to be the case if you share the concerns Bobby does about depth?
Well, specifically because some of these Knicks guys have had some injury concerns. OG Anunoby and Karl Towns have had injury concerns in recent years. I will say this, while their depth at big man is an issue, Mitchell Robinson is expected to come back at some point this season. It's going to be a few months, but he is still on the roster. He is a starter quality player, so they are potentially going to have a starter quality backup on that team to come. The second thing is, this was a bet on Karl Towns, no doubt, but it was a smaller bet on Miles McBride. They believe that he can step up and handle a bigger load. He shot 41% from three-point range last year. They need someone to fill all of those shots that Dante DiVincenzo is leaving with his trade. I think Miles McBride will step up and play a bigger role for them as well.
Well, the interesting thing here is that I remember last year at the same time, the big question when we were talking about Boston, who eventually won the NBA championship, did they have enough depth? And we weren't talking about Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard or, certainly we know we're going to get with Al Horford. So for New York to certainly take that next step, and if there is an injury, they're going to have to rely on certainly Deuce McBride. We saw him in the playoffs here. Landry Shamet, certainly a name to keep an eye on for some shooting here. So although there's a concern now, let's maybe see how this develops during the regular season.
Right. You're saying let's not make all of our judgments here in the early goings of October. Let's let them play a couple of games before we fully decide what we think about Nashville. That's where the Grizzlies announced that former Defensive Player of the Year Jaren Jackson Jr. sustained a low-grade hamstring strain on day 1 of camp. However, he is expected to be ready for opening night. Perk, any early concerns here?
Not really when it comes down to a low-grade hamstring, long as he's ready for opening night, because he's going to be a very, very important piece for us, the Grizzlies' success, especially after losing Steven Adams.
Well, let's stick in the West here, Perk. Luka Doncic sustained a left calf contusion, just a fancy word for a bruise, so he is expected to be ready for opening night. Earlier this morning, Coach Jason Kidd, he told Mark Stein that this is the deepest team that Luka has ever been on. Bobby, do you agree?
Oh, I do. Throwing out that word again, depth, right? When you look at Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Jaden Hardy, Quentin Grimes, who they got in the trade, certainly Dante Exum here. Certainly that backcourt is loaded.
And they want to make a run back to the finals, get farther than they did last season. Lastly, though, the betting favorites in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they finished last season with the best record in the Western Conference. And of course, they added some key pieces. Alex Caruso, Isaiah Hartenstein. SGA comes in to his 7th season with the 3rd best odds to win MVP. And there are expectations that Lightning will follow this Thunder.
Really, honestly, when we sucked as a basketball team, we weren't worried about the world's going to respect us. You know, we were just like, we're not where we want to be. Let's make sure that we get to where we want to be. And the only way to do that is to get better every day. And we did a good job of that.
You know, you got to be real careful with expectations, especially when you attach them to outcomes. You know, if you put expectations super high and you're just short of it, you might think that you weren't successful. And if you put expectations super low and you're just above it, you might think you're really successful. So you got to be careful with expectations.
I got to say, when any quote starts with, you know, when we sucked as a basketball team, you know whatever follows is going to be gold. But Brian, you were actually there. You were at Media Day with the Thunder earlier this week. And you heard a lot of that, right? Just that deflecting maybe of expectations.
Yeah, there was a couple of things that took me, but that I really took away from it. One was for 2 hours, Malika, they brought players up to the podium who were really, really good players. It's not like I didn't know who was on their roster, but when you actually sit there and they bring player after player after player, you're like, wow, what a parade. The second thing is they all said the exact same thing, essentially. They all had that line that you just heard from Chet, which was to distance themselves from expectations. And what I was thinking about was a year ago on Media Day, I was in Boston. They had just done the Drew Holiday trade. They had done the Kristaps Porzingis trade. They had had a 50-win season the year before where they had huge expectations. And everything that you heard from Boston was, we need to win this championship. We got to win it now. I think Oklahoma City is every bit as talented as that Celtics team was last year. They just are not as experienced and as proven, and they're stepping back from that. They are sort of leaning on their youth and not setting those expectations. I'm not sure that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I know that I heard the Celtics talk about championship day one, and I hear much more process coming out of the Thunder.
Interesting. Well, some trivia here. One of us on this set, and I'll give you 4 guesses as to who, was actually on the Thunder's roster the last time they went to the NBA Finals. It was Mr. Kendrick Perkins. Perk, what is your pep talk for this year's Thunder squad?
Look, I don't want to hear about not having expectations. Damn it, the expectations is to get it done. At least make it to the NBA Finals. You're the only team in the Western Conference, in my opinion, that check all boxes. So what comes with that? It's a young team. So sacrificing individual goals, because when you set a goal high, like winning the championship, you're going to reach smaller goals on the way to that bigger goal. You have SGA, who's a young superstar in this league. You have Chet, who is going to be a young superstar in this league. You filled in the blanks with getting Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. J-Dub is going to come into his own. You have shooting. Isaiah Joe is a sniper. You have all the pieces. Look, the fan base is going to be rocking. They're excited. I don't know if they still call it Brick City or whatever the case may be, but I know when you're playing well and you're dominating and you're shining light on the city, the fans are going to embrace you. This is your year to get to the NBA Finals. I don't want to hear nothing else.
Hey, if I'm on the Thunder's roster, I'm feeling fired up after that pep talk from you, Big Perk. But you named...
Well, get up from your seat and go dunk then.
Yeah, I'm on it right now. You named like 11 gazillion million... You named like a gazillion million 11, 10 players
City,
there.
Perk. You don't want Brick City.
Yeah, a little bit of that. But Perk, you named so many players there. There's a whole lot of youth, and I'm saying that as a 29-year-old, so you know that I really mean that, Bobby. How do you see that playing out?
Well, we're going to show you on the touchscreen right now, and I'm looking at it right now. And when you look at this roster in Oklahoma City, certainly roster creativity, a lot of different ways you can go, and certainly this is the Oklahoma City roster right now, and there's a lot of interchangeable parts. We're going to go to some video right now, and we're going to show Chet Holmgren at center last year, and certainly against Anthony Davis here. And this is against Davis, right? They're sending the double right now with Josh Giddey. Now he's going one-on-one, backing him up, right? Body to body, easy basket here. And look what they can do now. Let's put Isaiah Hartenstein in the lineup. We'll put him in front and take out Jalen Williams. We'll go to some video here with Hartenstein. Same thing against the Lakers. Anthony Davis here. This is with Hartenstein in a Knicks uniform here. One-on-one. No help is needed, right? Defended terrifically. And that's what Oklahoma City can do. They can play both players together if they want to. Certainly you could put Isaiah Joe, Jalen Williams back in the lineup, but there's a lot of interchangeable parts. And real quick, when you look at this roster, the win improvement, right? 24, 40 to 57. They address some of their needs. And the young core, that's the beauty of it. 11 out of the 14 players under 26 years or older.
Yeah, and so really we're going to see this core have a long runway here. Brian, a successful season for the Thunder in your mind is what?
I think they can reach the finals. By the way, Malika, if you were on the Thunder, you'd be the second oldest player. So they are a very young team that hasn't experienced much setbacks yet. I think that has pluses and minuses, but this team can reach the finals, no doubt.
I got to say, Brian, as soon as players have started calling me ma'am at media day, that's how I've been feeling about this. All right, guys, I got to go get ready. I got to go dunk on our Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo as they were formally introduced as Minnesota Timberwolves. Here's their reactions to being traded.
Yeah, it was a lot of emotion. You know, you spend a certain amount of time in a place, New York, you know, going there 5 years ago and, you know, having a goal in mind, you know, to accomplish a lot of great things and, you know, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into, you know, that organization and uniform.
When you look at the big picture, my mind wasn't on, you know, what teams are interested in me when I was in New York. I was fully there. I wanted to be there. You know, once I realized that this is a, you know, real thing and actually happening, my mind kind of transitioned to Minnesota, and I'm 100% here, and I'm super excited.
My wife was actually saying that it could be a lot worse, for sure. You know, I'm not going to throw any shots out here, but yeah, it could be worse, you know. And like I said, I'm a basketball player, and I want to win. You know, at this point in my career, I've accomplished a lot of great things on the individual level, but I want to win a championship, and you know, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. You know, that's what matters. Winning matters the most.
Yeah, it could have been worse. It could have been the other side of the bridge. But anyway, we love Kendra Randall taking the glass half full approach there. Brian Windhorst, how does Julius fit with this team?
You know, Malika, I was kind of surprised over the last week at how many executives I talked to who felt like the Timberwolves won this trade, which is not something that you would expect to hear when, you know, most people would agree the best player in the trade went to the Knicks. But I think what they are reacting to is that the way the Wolves were able to rebalance their roster in this trade, get Julius Randle, get DiVincenzo, who helps them off the bench, give Rob Dillingham, their lottery pick, some time where he's not maybe needed as much out of the gate with this, and also reduce their long-term payroll for a guy in Karl Towns who had a really big contract. And so the big thing will be, what is Julius Randle's role playing alongside Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert, and is he a long-term fit there? Does he sign an extension later this year? Does he pick up his player option? But I think a lot of people feel like the Wolves improved themselves short and medium term in this deal.
Well, they did improve. And you know what? I'm expecting to see a lot of Naz Reid and Julius Randle play at that 4 or 5, right? And, you know, I think Julius Randle is going to have to make that shift of being comfortable with playing the center position at times. And he could do it, right? Because he's a guy that could roll to the basket. And you got a guy like Naz Reid who can stretch the floor. He could do a lot of things. I honestly believe Rudy Gobert is going to be the odd man out. I'm not saying he's not going to be in the starting lineup, but what I'm saying is when it matters the most in finishing games, if I'm the coach, I'm going with Julius Randle and Naz Reid to close my game. One thing about Julius Randle, one thing that we cannot knock, every situation he's been in, he's produced and put up numbers. He always shows up to work. He's reliable. You could count on him playing hard and competing on both ends. And I think that's a perfect thing when you go and play with a guy like Anthony Edwards, who doesn't believe in taking nights off or even taking possessions off.
I just want to underscore, Brian, you said that the Timberwolves, you're hearing from a lot of executives, won this trade. And I know a lot of the focus is rightfully on Julius Randle and what he brings. But, Bobby, you're maybe looking elsewhere for why folks feel so good about this?
I do, and I agree with Brian. I've talked to two teams this morning, and they confirmed that same sentiment. But the one player that we haven't talked about as much is Donte DiVincenzo, who led the Knicks last year in three-point percentage, broke the team record here. This Minnesota team going into preseason, there was two concerns as far as the roles of Rob Dillingham and certainly Terrence Shannon, their first-round picks this year, how those two players would step up here. And now when you add Donte DiVincenzo to Nickeil Alexander-Walker to Naz Reid, you have three starting-level players that can come off your bench for Minnesota right now.
Wendy, last word on this.
Yeah, I think a big factor for Minnesota is going to be where do they get the 3-point shooting? Because 3-point shooting is very important. Karl Towns was a huge guy in the 3-point shooting because Rudy Gobert doesn't shoot them. They get a guy in DiVincenzo who, as Bobby pointed out, is a high volume 3-point shooter. So where do they get that 3-point shooting in their starting lineup? Let's see what Chris Finch has designed to try to cover up that huge hole that Cat's offense is leaving there.
You brought up Cat, so let's get to him and the other side of this trade because we got our first glimpse of him in a non-photoshopped version of a Knicks uniform today. You can see him here in Charlotte getting some shots up. That's where the team is holding training camp. And just 2 hours ago, Towns, he talked about reuniting with a very familiar face.
With Tibbs, I learned a lot, and he helped me in my career forward. So, just building great habits, staying disciplined, putting in work, something that I think all y'all know it's all about. Continuing to take that approach every single day. I think it gives us a little bit of a head start. You know, I know the offense that he runs, I know the way he likes to play defense, and I know what he expects from his players.
Karl Anthony Towns, he's the self-proclaimed best shooting big man ever. And while that turned some heads because we've all seen, Dirk play, the numbers, they make a good case for Cat. Since coming into the league, the only 7-footer with more 3-pointers is Lauri Markkanen. But Perk, I hear you spy something.
I'm Kendrick Perkins, better known as Big Perk, and nothing gets past me. Freeze! Just when you thought it did get past me, there I am. I spy a problem. I spy it all. Carry the hell on. That's right. No sunshades today. Damn it, reading glasses, because I do spy a problem. That problem is Karl Anthony Towns going to the New York Knicks, who's going to be a problem for not only the teams in the Eastern Conference, but the rest of the league. And I know we talk about, Cat and his ability to stretch the floor, but you know what else he's great at? Putting the ball on the floor. Look at this roll and replace. Usually when Cat come up, he's open for the three, but because he's a great 3-point shooter, his defender is locking and trailing, and he does a great job of getting downhill. He'll go Karl Anthony Towns again, running to this sweet spot. He's such a great shooter. Look at the closeout, and Cat knows this. 7 foot, 265 pounds, and snatching the screws out the rim. This is what New York is getting, not just shooting. One of the most skilled bigs in the game today in Karl Anthony Towns, and I spy a problem for the rest of the league.
So that's what we spy on the court, as Perk would say, carry on from Cat. But in his 9 years in Minnesota, he really embedded himself with the community off of the court as well. And no one knows that better than the Athletic's John Krasinski, who joins us before we bounce. And John, you covered Karl day in and day out since his rookie season. And right before he was traded, you got a very special and very personal glimpse into what Karl means to the community. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened?
Yeah, sure, Malika. The news breaks on Friday night that he's traded to New York, and immediately as I'm working the story, the one thing that I'm thinking about is, what am I going to tell Nita? And Nita is my 9-year-old daughter. She is an enormous Karl Anthony Towns fan. Her brother, Owen, is also a big Towns fan. Over the years, they've had chances to meet him briefly, say hello to him. Karl once gave them both headbands when they were young. And so that made sure in Nita's eyes that they were best friends going forward. And so late that night, on the night of the trade, I got a text from Karl Anthony Towns, who knows that these kids really look up to him. And he said, hey, how's the family doing? And I said, Karl, not going to lie to you, Nita cried herself to sleep. She's very upset by it. And he said, where are they going to be tomorrow? Do they have any sports? And I just was thinking, well, yes, Nita has a soccer tournament on Saturday, and here's where it is. You can come. And I thought, no way is he going to show up with all of the things that are happening. His life has just been turned upside down. He's got to leave the next day for New York. Lo and behold, he shows up about halftime of the game, watches the game, takes pictures with everyone that asked of him.
Wow.
After the game, pulls Nita aside, gives her a big hug, gives her some whispers of encouragement, and just spent a little time with two kids who needed to say goodbye to him. And it was just a really emotional moment. And I think that Karl also probably felt some love there as well, a little bit of a goodbye after 9 years in Minnesota.
Just to think, John, after just a couple hours after finding out this life-altering news, he decided to stop by a children's soccer tournament to be able to say goodbye. I think that says a whole lot about Karl Anthony Towns, and I think it says a whole lot about your coverage, your fairness to someone over a long period of time. So, John, thank you so much for sharing that story and for stopping. Is on the scene. Hey, Kendra.
Hello, Malika. I mean, doesn't get much better than this to be in training camp here.
Doesn't get much better than that. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, Malika, we all know that the big question for the Warriors right now is about that starting lineup. And yesterday, Steve Kerr told us he hasn't really made any progress in figuring out what that group's going to look like. And through the first two camp, there hasn't been even starting lineups and second units in their scrimmages. It's just been a bunch of different combinations as Kerr tries to figure it out. One of the things he's still deciding for some of these guys is, what position do I even want them to play? Like a Draymond Green, is he the 4 or the 5? One thing that will be dependent on is another guy who you guys spoke a lot about yesterday, Jonathan Kuminga. Steve Kerr said he views Kuminga as either a 3 or a 4, but here's what Draymond Green had to say about his teammate.
I think he's a 3.
Yeah.
It's always been my opinion. That's going to change. That's not going to change. I think, to play the 4, it requires a certain skill set. So oftentimes people approach the 4 as if it's not a position. You think like, oh, I can just move a guy there. No, it's a position that you have to know how to play.
Now, when I spoke with Kuminga at Media Day and told him, your coach is saying that 3 of these starting positions are up for grabs, a huge grin spread across his face. Malika, he understands the opportunity that he has here, and he could make a real impact on this team. The Warriors, they're scheduled to play their first preseason game against the Clippers here in Honolulu on Saturday. We're going to get our first look at some form of a starting lineup for Golden State, but by no means does that mean that's the group that Kerr's going to go with throughout the rest of the regular preseason and then into the regular season.
Kendra Andrews, thank you so very much. I appreciate that, sis. We called this segment Full Court Press, but maybe I should have called it Family Check-In, a little closer to home. The Lakers, they're in El Segundo. Our Dave McMenamin is there. Dave, what is the latest out of LA?
Malika, for the 39-year-old LeBron James, training camp is old hat. This is his 22nd one of his career, but there's been a little bit of a boost that he's gotten from his 19-year-old son being around. And Anthony Davis described the scene at practice yesterday when Bronny started cooking.
It's fantastic, to be able to be here and witness it, in practice. And Bronny hit a 3 over him today. Everybody was talking smack, in Bronny's favor. And then Bron came down and just bullied somebody, just took it out on who, I forgot who it was. And got a layup. Bronny came back down, hit another 3, I think over Austin. And Bron won with the ball. So you can see, even though they weren't matched up, the competition is there.
The Lakers just left the practice facility about a half hour ago to make the couple-hour drive to Palm Springs for their preseason debut on Friday against Minnesota. It remains to be seen whether LeBron and Bronny will take the court together in that game. JJ Redick said that we would see sometime this weekend both LeBron James and Anthony Davis play for the Lakers. It will be JJ's coaching debut. We know that for sure on Friday. D'Angelo Russell said that JJ's been, quote, in his bag so far in training camp. D'Angelo was golfing yesterday, thinking back to a play to coach to tell him just how much he loved that play.
Dave McMenamin, thank you so very much. Friday, we will get our first glimpse of these Lakers in preseason. Now to a developing story here on NBA Today. Joel Embiid, he played only 39 games last year due to a left knee injury. He did return for the postseason. The Sixers lost 4-2 to the New York Knicks. This year, Embiid is looking for a little help pacing himself so that he can have a longer playoff run. Take a listen.
Taking my time, not pushing when you don't have to. But then again, I also let them know that I'm a competitor. I'm going to want to go out there and play. So I got to make sure, they got to make those decisions and, save me from myself. They know that if they have to punch me and slap me, take my stuff away from me not to get on that court, they're going to have to do it.
When I was in Philadelphia earlier this week, Joel Embiid was talking about that then as well. It feels like there's something different. He used the term deferring a little bit. He wants to empower, he said to me, other players on this roster so that he feels like he can get to that finish line. But Perk, are you buying what Embiid is selling here, a new approach this season?
Well, I do know this. He needs to buy into his own saying, and that's trusting the process, right? It's obvious that they have a plan in place, and long as Joel Embiid stick to the plan and sacrifice and maintain the weight loss and get to the postseason, because that's what's going to matter the most. He's not going to be judged on what he could do in the regular season. We already know what he could do, and that's be one of the best players, leading scorer in the regular season. So long as he follow the plan and trust the process, because the process is not over until you complete the mission, right? They didn't help build it, and you still trust in the process, but until you hang in the banner and get in the championship ring, the process is still going. You just have to trust it.
But he knows that, right? He said to our Tim Bontemps, Wendy, over the summer.
Do we?
He said that, Perk. He said, I know that my legacy, it's not going to be judged on what I do in the regular season. The only thing that can change it is the postseason.
I get that, Malika. A lot of people say a lot of things, but you need to show us. You got to show us. We got to see it. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think there were times when Joel Embiid came into a season with his number one goal being to win the MVP or to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Yes.
I think what he's basically saying here is he's changed that mentality, and his goal, at least right now, is to be healthy in the playoffs. He got criticized by some people last year because at the end of the season, he was a little heavy and out of shape a little bit. I don't know if that was fair because he had been injured throughout the whole year on that knee. He wasn't able to keep his conditioning. The fact he was able to come back and contribute in the playoffs at all, I think was remarkable. But he has addressed that. Look at him now. He is in better condition. He did play for the national team this summer, which I'm sure helped it, but I was with him there in Paris. He's lost a bunch of weight since that happened. So he is trying to do what he can, which is lose the weight and come into training camp talking about needing to pace himself throughout the year. Obviously, you are correct, Perk. The actions are going to matter more than the words, but at least he is saying the right words and taking the right off-season actions coming into this season.
Well, the one thing, too, is that he has Nick Nurse, who had Kawhi Leonard in that 2018-19 season, and Leonard was coming off a year in San Antonio where he didn't play, and they managed Kawhi Leonard's minutes and certainly his games during that year as far as not playing back-to-back, and they wound up going out to win a championship. But when you look at Joel Embiid's minutes the last 3 years, last year was the fewest minutes he played over the last 3 years. It's not like his workload is at 37, 38 minutes. It's at 33, 34 minutes per game here. So a lot of these have been somewhat freak injuries a little bit here. Last year was the knee, of course, so that's going to be the concern as far as managing, as far as where he is. And as Perk said, his weight has to be down for him to be healthy.
But he said, Perk, that he's coming in 20, 30 pounds lighter to this training camp.
I understand that, but as a player that dealt with weight issues and came into training camp in shape, you got to maintain it, Malika. You got to maintain it. Look, there's so many distractions throughout the course of the season, food-wise, right? Going to the restaurants after the game, on the plane, and those stewardesses, you know what I'm saying, they coming by and they got the chocolate chip cookies for dessert. You got to have the discipline to turn it down. That was my Celtic days. When I got to Oklahoma City, you know, we had snacks on the planes, but it was bananas, peanut butter sandwiches, you know what I mean, all the good stuff that you're supposed to be putting in your body. Again, it's going to come down to a level of discipline. How many times, let me ask y'all this, how many times have we watched Luka come into training camp looking like skinny Luka as the season progressed? When he get to the postseason, look like he done put those pounds back on, right? We've seen that. So that's the thing that needs to happen.
Listen, I'm not a professional athlete, but having traveled with the Nets during my time there, I know what Perk's talking about. I mean, I put on the, what do they call it, the freshman 15 during that season there, as far as the ability, just because everything is in front of you, and it's the ability to discipline yourself.
Really, though, Joel Embiid, the way that he is speaking.
Hello, Stephen Curry, considered by many to be one of the greatest players in NBA history, has already achieved practically everything the league has to offer. The Golden State Warriors point guard is a 4-time NBA champion, 2-time MVP, the only one to win unanimously, and the greatest three-point shooter of all time. However, even with such an impressive resume, Curry maintains the same enthusiasm, focus, and competitive desire that he demonstrated in his rookie year in the NBA in 2009. The fire that motivates him continues to burn brightly, even after 15 seasons full of glory. Now, entering his 16th season in the league, Curry is increasingly aware that his career will eventually come to an end. At 36 years old, the natural physical wear and tear is undeniable, and he understands that retirement is approaching. However, far from letting this reality get him down, the veteran sees it as an incentive to dedicate himself even more to training and playing. For him, the fact that his basketball journey is moving toward its final chapter serves as a constant reminder of the importance of enjoying every moment. I love playing the game. This is my happy place. I'm happy to know that the game will end at some point. Hopefully not anytime soon, but I'm motivated just trying to make the most of it, Curry said in an interview with 95.7 The Game, reflecting on his continued drive. Curry's mindset is an example of longevity that is not only physical, but also emotional and mental. Despite all his accomplishments, the number 30 has shown no signs of being ready to hang up his cleats. On the contrary, he has stated that he hopes to continue playing for a long time and that it is not time to say goodbye just yet. However, everyone knows that he is not getting any younger. At 36, he is already beyond the age at which many players start thinking about retirement. For perspective, the average retirement age in the NBA is around 35, and Curry's longevity is a testament to his commitment to his physical and mental health. Stephen Curry has accomplished almost everything a basketball player could want. In addition to his 4 NBA titles, he has broken three-point records, redefined the way modern basketball is played, and finally silenced his critics by being named Finals MVP in 2022, securing his 4th championship ring. Many still compared his accomplishments to those of other legends, such as LeBron James, who also has 4 NBA titles. However, Curry, with his unique trajectory, has proven himself to be a figure in his own right, capable of changing the course of the league with his revolutionary style of play. His legacy is now secure, but his hunger to compete remains insatiable. At this stage in his career, accolades and money are no longer the main drivers that drive him. It is estimated that Curry has amassed a fortune of over $160 million in NBA salary alone, not counting endorsements and other sources of income. Therefore, what drives him today is, above all, his love for the game. It's about making the most of the privilege of being an elite player in one of the world's greatest sports leagues, and few athletes demonstrate that level of passion so late in their careers. That commitment is something even Curry's critics admit is worthy of admiration. Few players take that approach to basketball, and it's one of the reasons Curry continues to be so respected, whether he's loved or hated by opposing fans. He's a rare example of longevity combined with competitive relevance, something many aspire to, but few can maintain over so many years. With his mindset focused on the present and the pursuit of new achievements, Curry is gearing up for another season, and basketball fans can't wait to see what else he has to offer the game they love. Leave your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. Cheers and see you next time.